The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Coalition stretched higher than most planetary cathedrals. Crystalline walls caught the light of 1,000 worlds, casting rainbow patterns across the assembled delegates. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, some breathing oxygen, others suspended in specialized atmospheric bubbles. At the center platform stood 5 humans, looking impossibly small in their dark blue uniforms. Captain Elena Vasquez kept her spine straight and her face neutral. She had practiced this moment for months. Behind her stood her officers, Commander Jackson, Lieutenant Park, Engineer Chen, and Medical Officer Okonkwo. They were humanity's best, chosen to represent Earth at this historic moment. After 50 years of probationary membership, humanity would finally receive its defense allocation. Real warships, a place among the military powers of the galaxy. High Chancellor Vexith descended from his elevated throne. The Corthian was massive, standing nearly 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin that shimmered like polished copper. His species had ruled the Coalition military for 2 centuries. He carried a holographic projector in one of his lower hands. Humanity. His voice boomed through the chamber's translation system. Your probation period has concluded. The Coalition recognizes your persistence. Several alien delegates made sounds that the translators identified as laughter. As is customary, you shall receive vessels appropriate to your status. Elena's heart raced. This was it. Humanity would finally have real ships, not the converted cargo haulers they had been using for decades. Vexith activated the projector. 12 massive ships appeared in holographic form above the assembly. They were brutal-looking things, all sharp angles and weapon batteries. Corthian dreadnoughts. Elena recognized the class from her studies. These were serious warships. The Mortis-class dreadnoughts, Vexith announced. 12 vessels, as befits a junior member species. He paused, and Elena could have sworn she saw amusement in his multifaceted eyes. These ships have served the Corthian Empire with distinction for 3 centuries. We now transfer them to humanity's stewardship. 300 years old. Elena's stomach tightened. She had studied enough military history to know what that meant. Ships that old would be barely functional, held together by patches and prayers. But she kept her expression carefully neutral. Commander Jackson leaned close to her ear. Captain, those ships are on the decommission list. I checked the registry this morning. Elena gave the smallest nod. She had suspected as much. Around the chamber, alien delegates were failing to hide their amusement. Some were openly laughing now. A Velcaran delegate made a series of clicks that the translator rendered as, "How generous giving them your garbage." Vexith raised one hand, and the chamber quieted. These vessels are being transferred from active service to humanity's care. They await you at the Corthian military yards at Sector 713. He fixed his gaze on Elena. Do you accept this generous gift on behalf of your species? It was a trap, Elena realized. If she refused, humanity would be seen as ungrateful and disrespectful. They might never get another chance. If she accepted, humanity would be stuck with ships that were probably falling apart. The galaxy would laugh at them either way. But there was a third option. Accept with grace and prove them all wrong. Elena stepped forward. High Chancellor, on behalf of humanity and the Terran Defense Force, we gratefully accept these vessels. We will honor the service they have given to the galaxy and ensure they serve with distinction once more. The chamber fell silent. Vexith's expression was unreadable. Very well. The transfer will be completed within the week. May these ships serve you as they have served us. The way he said it made Elena's skin crawl. It sounded like a curse, not a blessing. The ceremony concluded with formal pleasantries. As the human delegation filed out, Elena heard whispers following them. Those ships will kill them before they make it home. Reactor failures killed half the last crew. Humans don't know what they've accepted. In the corridor outside, Lieutenant Park finally spoke. Captain, those ships are death traps. The Mortis class has a 70% casualty rate from system failures alone. The Corthians were going to scrap them next month. I know, Elena said quietly. Then why did you accept? Engineer Chen asked. Her practical mind was already calculating the problems they would face. Because it's what we have, Elena replied. The alternative was nothing. At least this is something to work with. A voice spoke from behind them. Captain Vasquez? They turned to see a Quellan approaching. The small reptilian alien looked nervous, his crest flickering between colors. "My name is Rixtal. I am a maintenance engineer in the Corthian fleet. How can we help you?" Elena asked. Rixtal glanced around, making sure they were alone. "I wanted to warn you. Those ships are dangerous. The Corthians gave them to you because they expect you to fail. Most of those vessels have failing reactor cores. The weapon systems overload when fired. The life support fails without warning. 3 Corthian crews died on those ships in the last 2 years alone." Elena studied the small alien. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because it is wrong," Rixtal said simply. "You are new to the galaxy. You deserve a fair chance. The Corthians are testing you, seeing if you will give up or die trying. I thought you should know what you face." "Thank you," Elena said sincerely. "We appreciate the honesty." Rixtal nodded and hurried away. The human delegation stood in silence for a moment. Dr. Okonkwo was the first to speak. "So they really did give us floating coffins." "Yes," Elena agreed. She looked at each of her officers in turn. "But here's what they don't understand about humans. We've been making impossible things work since we lived in caves. We've crossed oceans in wooden boats, gone to space in metal cans, and survived everything our own planet threw at us. These ships are a challenge, and humans have never backed down from a challenge." Commander Jackson smiled slowly. "You're thinking we can actually make these work?" "I'm thinking we don't have a choice," Elena replied. "But more than that, I'm thinking about all the times in history when humans were given something broken and turned it into something amazing. The aliens think they've insulted us. They think they've set us up to fail. Haven't they?" Park asked. Elena's smile was fierce. "No, they've given us an opportunity. They've given us 12 ships that they've already written off, which means we can do anything we want with them. Strip them down, rebuild them, make them into something new, something human." She looked at each of them. "When we get to those shipyards, I want every engineer, every technician, every creative mind humanity has. We're going to take their garbage and turn it into something that will make the galaxy pay attention." Chen was already making notes on her datapad. "It will take months, maybe years. Then we'll take years," Elena said. "But we'll do it right. And when we're done, those aliens who laughed at us today will see what humans can really do." They walked toward the docking bay where their transport waited. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with gossip about humanity's foolish acceptance of worthless ships. Ahead of them lay 12 ancient dying vessels that everyone assumed would be their graves. Elena Vasquez smiled. They had no idea what was coming. The 12 ships arrived at Titan orbital shipyards 3 weeks later, towed by massive coalition tugs. From a distance, they looked impressive enough. Up close, they looked like exactly what they were: ancient vessels held together by outdated technology and desperate repairs. Elena stood in the observation dome, watching as the ships were carefully maneuvered into the vast construction bays that orbited Saturn's largest moon. Each vessel was over 1 kilometer long, bristling with weapon ports and sensor arrays. They should have been magnificent. Instead, they looked sad and tired. Admiral David Chen joined her at the viewport. He was not related to Engineer Chen, despite sharing a surname. The Admiral ran the Titan yards and would oversee the refit operation. "I've seen the initial reports," he said without preamble. "It's worse than we thought. Ship 7, the one you're calling Defiant, has antimatter containment that's failing. Ship 3 has a reactor that's 1 power surge away from going critical. Ship 9's main computer thinks it's still the year 2731 by Corthian calendar and keeps trying to report to commanders who died a century ago." "Can we fix them?" Elena asked. "Fix them?" Admiral Chen laughed, but it was not a happy sound. "Captain, I don't think you understand. These ships are held together by luck and stubbornness. Half the systems use technology we don't even have anymore, because we moved past it 50 years ago. The weapons are calibrated for Corthian neural interfaces that will literally kill a human if they try to use them. And the hull integrity on all 12 ships is below 50%. "I didn't ask if it would be easy," Elena said quietly. "I asked if we can do it." Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, and this time it was genuine. "You know what? Yes, it'll take every engineer we have, cost more than building new ships, and probably kill some of us in the process. But yes, we can do it. Then let's get started." Over the next week, teams of engineers swarmed over all 12 vessels. What they found was even worse than the initial scan suggested. The Corthians had kept these ships running through increasingly desperate patches and workarounds. Critical systems had been repaired so many times that nobody was sure what was original equipment and what was improvised fixes. Engineer Chen led the team examining Defiant's reactor core. What she found made her call an immediate evacuation of that entire section. The containment field is being held in place by a literal patch made of hull plating, she reported at the daily briefing. Not even good hull plating. I think they welded it on using whatever metal was handy. The antimatter is contained, but barely. If someone sneezed too hard near it, we'd have an explosion that would take out half of Titan. Can we replace it? Helena asked. The entire reactor? Chen shook her head. Not with Corthian technology. Their reactor design is completely different from ours. It's bigger, less efficient, and honestly kind of stupid in terms of engineering. Then don't use their design, Elena said. Use ours. The room went quiet. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, the chief systems engineer, leaned forward. You want us to rip out the Corthian reactors and install human ones? Why not? They gave us the ships. They didn't say we couldn't modify them. It would mean completely redesigning the power distribution systems, Kim said slowly. Nothing would be compatible. We'd have to tear out everything and start over. So we start over, Elena replied. That decision changed everything. Once they accepted that they didn't have to work within Corthian limitations, human creativity exploded. Engineers stopped trying to fix broken alien systems and started asking what they could do instead. The Corthian reactors came out, replaced by human-designed fusion antimatter hybrid cores. They were smaller, more efficient, and produced 20% more power. The space saved allowed for additional backup systems and better shielding. The weapons were next. Corthian energy weapons required massive capacitors and cooling systems that took up enormous space. Worse, they had a tendency to overload and explode when pushed too hard. The human team stripped them all out. In their place went railguns, simple, reliable, devastating. Magnetic accelerators that could fire solid projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed. The ammunition was cheap, easy to produce, and could be manufactured on board using the ship's fabricators. Each gun could fire hundreds of rounds before needing maintenance. They added missile batteries using human-designed smart missiles that could change course mid-flight. They installed plasma lance systems that had been experimental in the human fleet, but worked perfectly with the new power systems. Each ship became a floating arsenal of human weapons technology. The hull armor was reinforced with carbon composite plating. It was lighter than Corthian armor, but actually stronger. Reactive panels were added that could absorb or deflect energy weapon impacts. Point defense systems using rapid-fire kinetic weapons replaced the slow, energy-hungry Corthian defense grid. The biggest challenge was the control systems. Corthian ships used neural interface technology that linked directly to the pilot's brain. It was fast and efficient, but completely incompatible with human neurology. 3 volunteers who tried to use the existing systems ended up in the medical bay with severe neurological damage. Dr. Sarah Okonkwo, the medical officer who had been part of the original delegation, worked with the engineering teams on a solution. She was not just a doctor, but had degrees in neurology and cybernetics. She studied the Corthian system for weeks, taking it apart piece by piece. The problem is that their neural patterns are different from ours, she explained at a briefing. Their brainwaves operate on different frequencies. The interface literally scrambles human brain signals because it's trying to interpret them as Corthian thoughts. Can we modify it? Admiral Chen asked. Better. I can build a translation layer. A buffer system that converts human neural patterns into something the Corthian system can understand, and vice versa. It will be slower than a pure Corthian interface, but still faster than manual controls. It took 3 months to develop and test. The first trials were disasters. The second round worked, but gave pilots terrible headaches. The third generation worked smoothly and actually felt natural to the human operators. Several pilots said it was like the ship became an extension of their body. While the modifications continued, Elena worked on recruiting crews. She needed people who were willing to risk everything on experimental ships that everyone else thought were death traps. She expected to struggle to find volunteers. Instead, she was overwhelmed with applications. Over 10,000 people applied for crew positions on the 12 ships. They were veterans from Earth's military, engineers who wanted to work on cutting-edge technology, young officers looking to prove themselves, and ordinary people who wanted to be part of something historic. Elena interviewed hundreds of them personally. She looked for creativity, adaptability, and that peculiar human trait of looking at impossible problems and saying, "Let me try anyway." She found her crews among dreamers and tinkerers, veterans and rookies, people from every continent and culture on Earth. They called themselves the Coffin Corps, embracing the insult that the galaxy had thrown at humanity. They wore it as a badge of pride. They were the people who would take the galaxy's garbage and make it fly. 6 months after the ships arrived at Titan, Defiant was ready for trials. The shakedown cruise was scheduled for a simple flight around Saturn's rings. Every system would be tested under real conditions. Elena sat in the captain's chair, her hands resting on the modified controls. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Everything looked strange compared to a Corthian bridge. Human displays had replaced alien ones. The layout made sense to human operators. Even the chairs were different, designed for human bodies. "All systems green," reported Commander Jackson from the tactical station. "Engineering reports ready," added Chen from her station. "Navigation has the course plotted," Lieutenant Park confirmed. Elena took a deep breath. This was the moment. Either the ship would work, or 6 months of effort would end in disaster. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for departure. Let's see what this lady can do. Helm, take us out." The engines fired smoothly. Defiant slid out of its dock with a grace that the old Corthian vessel had never possessed. They cleared the shipyard and entered open space. "Increase to half power," Elena ordered. The ship surged forward. Systems that had been rebuilt from scratch worked in perfect harmony. The reactor hummed with controlled power. The weapons systems came online without a flicker. The shields wrapped around the hull like a protective cocoon. They ran through every test on the list. Emergency maneuvers, weapon drills, system failures and recovery. The ship performed beautifully. When they finally returned to dock 8 hours later, Elena felt a fierce pride burning in her chest. Over the next 6 months, the other 11 ships completed their refits and trials. Each one became operational. Each one transformed from a dying Corthian relic into something new and powerful. Admiral Chen stood with Elena in the observation dome, watching as all 12 ships held formation outside the shipyards. "They're not Corthian dreadnoughts anymore," he said quietly. "I'm not sure what they are. Something new. Something human." Elena smiled. "They're exactly what we needed them to be. Ships that can carry us forward. Ships that show the galaxy what humans can do when we refuse to give up." She activated her communicator, broadcasting to the Coalition's military command frequency. The message was simple and direct. "Coalition Command, this is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force. Humanity's defense fleet is operational and ready for duty." The response was a long silence. Then a terse acknowledgement from a Corthian officer who sounded distinctly unhappy. Elena smiled. They had seen the first part. The real surprise would come when these ships actually had to fight. The alert came 3 months after the human fleet became operational. Elena was in her quarters aboard Defiant, reviewing crew performance reports when the priority signal flashed across her screen. She read it twice to make sure she understood. The Vraxian horde was moving. The Vraxians were not part of the Galactic Coalition. They were raiders and pirates. A nomadic fleet that swept through space like locusts, stealing resources and destroying anything in their path. They traveled in massive swarms. Hundreds of small, fast attack ships that could overwhelm almost any defense through sheer numbers. Coalition border worlds had learned to fear the sight of Vraxian scout ships. Where the scouts went, the horde followed within days. And now the scouts had been spotted near New Johannesburg, a human colony world with barely 200,000 people. Elena called an immediate briefing. Her senior officers gathered in the conference room within minutes. "The Coalition is dispatching a response fleet," Commander Jackson reported, pulling up tactical data. "But they're 6 weeks away. The Vraxians will hit New Johannesburg in 48 hours. What defenses does the colony have?" Elena asked. "Orbital platforms with light weapons, some ground-based missile batteries. Nothing that can stop a Vraxian assault." Jackson looked grim. "Coalition Command has recommended evacuation, but there's not enough time to evacuate everyone. How many Vraxian ships are we talking about?" Lieutenant Park asked. "Intelligence estimates over 200 attack craft plus support vessels." Jackson brought up the tactical display. "Standard Vraxian swarm tactics. They'll overwhelm the defenses through sheer volume of fire. then land raiding parties to strip the planet of anything valuable. The room was silent, 200 ships against a lightly defended colony. It would be a massacre. What about us? Engineer Chen asked quietly. Could we reach New Johannesburg in time? Elena was already calculating. If we push the engines hard, yes. Defiant, Relentless, and Indomitable could make it with 6 hours to spare. 3 ships against 200? Dr. Okonkwo shook her head. The numbers are impossible. The numbers are always impossible, Elena replied. That's never stopped humans before. Commander Jackson, send a priority message to Coalition Command. Inform them that Terran Defense Force ships Defiant, Relentless, and Indomitable are deploying to defend New Johannesburg. We'll buy time for the evacuation or the main fleet to arrive. Captain, Jackson said carefully, Coalition Command will think we're committing suicide. Let them think what they want. Those are our people down there. We're going. She looked around the room. I'm not ordering anyone on this mission. It's volunteer only. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship has 1 hour to do so. An hour later, not a single person had transferred. The Coffin Corps was going to war. The 3 human ships burned hard toward New Johannesburg. In the Combat Information Center aboard Defiant, Elena watched the tactical display update with new intelligence. The Vraxian fleet was exactly where predicted, and it was even larger than initially reported. 237 attack craft, plus carrier ships and supply vessels. Captain Torres of the Relentless appeared on the communication screen. She was a veteran of Earth's last major conflict, tough and practical. Captain Vasquez, I've been running simulations. We can't win a straight fight against those numbers. I know, Elena agreed. So we won't fight straight. Captain Morrison of the Indomitable grinned from his own screen. The youngest of the 3 captains, he had a reputation for aggressive tactics. I was hoping you'd say that. What's the plan? The Vraxians are used to fighting coalition ships, Elena explained. Coalition doctrine is all about formation fighting, maintaining defensive positions, coordinating fire. Very orderly, very predictable, and very ineffective against swarm tactics, Torres added. Exactly. But we're not coalition. We don't have to follow their rules. Elena pulled up her tactical plan. We're going to hit them fast and hit them hard. No formations, no defensive positions. We're going to move like fighters, not like capital ships. Over the next 18 hours, they refined the plan. They studied every recorded Vraxian engagement, looking for patterns and weaknesses. They ran simulation after simulation, testing different approaches. They arrived at New Johannesburg with 6 hours to spare. The colony's governor appeared on screen, relief evident on his face. Thank God you're here. We've been evacuating as many people as possible to the underground shelters, but we can't get everyone to safety in time. How long do you need? Elena asked. 8 hours to get everyone underground. 12 to finish the evacuation to the ships we have. Then we'll give you 12 hours. Get your people to safety, Governor. We'll handle the Vraxians. The enemy fleet arrived right on schedule. They dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, their ships spreading out like a plague of locusts. Elena watched them on the tactical display, counting vectors and calculating trajectories. The Vraxian commander opened a communication channel. He was a massive creature, all chitinous armor and sharp angles. When he spoke, the translator made his words sound like clicking and scraping. Unknown vessels, you defend this colony. Surrender now and we will allow you to leave. Fight and you will die. We are the Vraxian Horde. We have never been defeated. Elena opened her own channel, making sure it was broadcast to all 3 human ships and to the Vraxian fleet. This is Captain Elena Vasquez of the Terran Defense Force. This colony is under our protection. Leave now and you'll live to raid another day. Stay and you'll learn what happens when you threaten humans. The Vraxian commander made a sound that might have been laughter. 3 ancient Corthian ships? We have destroyed fleets 10 times your size. You are brave but foolish. We will enjoy picking through your wreckage. Those aren't Corthian ships anymore, Elena replied. Then she cut the channel. All ships engage at will. Show them what we've got. Defiant's engines flared to full power. The ship leaped forward with acceleration that would have been impossible for the old Corthian design. Beside her, Relentless and Indomitable matched her speed. The Vraxians responded exactly as expected, sending their attack craft forward in a massive wave. 200 ships moving in a swarm, each one firing as it came into range. Entering weapons range in 30 seconds, Jackson reported. Hold fire, Elena ordered. Let them get closer. I want them bunched up. The Vraxian ships closed in, expecting the human vessels to slow down or take defensive positions. Instead, the 3 human ships accelerated even harder. 15 seconds to impact. All weapons fire. Defiant's railguns opened up with a sound like continuous thunder. Solid projectiles launched at incredible speeds, each one carrying enough kinetic energy to punch through a Vraxian hull like it was paper. The missiles followed, spreading out to target multiple enemies at once. The plasma lances reached out like burning spears cutting through the swarm. In the first 10 seconds, 40 Vraxian ships simply ceased to exist. The remainder scattered in confusion, their tight formation broken by the sudden violence. "Break and engage," Elena ordered. The 3 human ships split apart, each one diving into different sections of the Vraxian fleet. What followed was not a battle in the traditional sense. It was a hunt. The human ships moved with a speed and agility that the Vraxians couldn't match. They made impossible turns, changed vectors without warning, and coordinated their fire with precision that seemed almost supernatural. The point defense systems proved their worth. Vraxian weapons fire that would have overwhelmed a coalition ship was intercepted by streams of kinetic rounds from the automated defense turrets. The AI-assisted targeting tracked hundreds of targets simultaneously, prioritizing threats and adjusting fire patterns in real time. Indomitable lived up to its name, charging straight through the center of the Vraxian formation. Its railguns never stopped firing, creating a corridor of destruction. Captain Morrison's voice came over the tactical channel, calm despite the chaos around him. "Target-rich environment here. Could use some help on my 6. Relentless responded immediately, swooping in from above to catch the Vraxian ships trying to flank Morrison. Captain Torres' gunnery crews were surgically precise, each shot carefully aimed to maximize damage. Elena watched the tactical display, coordinating the 3-ship force like a conductor leading an orchestra. Relentless enemy carrier at coordinate 773. Indomitable screen her approach. Defiant will provide cover fire. The 3 ships moved as one, their actions flowing together seamlessly. The Vraxian carrier, a massive vessel that launched waves of attack craft, found itself suddenly isolated as the human ships tore through its escorts. Relentless hit it with a full missile barrage, followed by sustained railgun fire. The carrier broke apart, its remaining attack craft left without support or direction. An hour into the battle, the Vraxians tried boarding tactics. It was their usual fallback when their ships couldn't win. Boarding pods launched toward Relentless, seeking to deliver warriors directly onto the human vessel. The first wave of pods was destroyed by point defense fire. The second wave got through. 30 pods slammed into Relentless's hull, and armored Vraxian warriors cut their way inside. They found the human Marines waiting for them. The Marines wore powered armor, each suit amplifying strength and providing heavy protection. They carried weapons designed for close-quarters combat, shotguns loaded with armor-piercing rounds, plasma cutters for dealing with heavily armored targets, and old-fashioned skill with hand-to-hand combat. The Vraxians were fierce warriors, evolved for combat and experienced in boarding actions, but they had never fought humans in close quarters before. The Marines moved through the ship's corridors with practiced efficiency, working in teams that covered each other perfectly. Every corner could hide an ambush. Every corridor became a killing ground. Within 30 minutes, the Vraxian boarding parties were eliminated. Not a single Marine was killed, though several were injured. Captain Torres reported calmly. Boarders repelled. All sections secure. Ready to continue engagement. The turning point came when Elena made a decision that would have been considered insane by any coalition officer. She pushed Defiant's reactor to 110%, well beyond recommended limits. The ship's frame groaned under the stress, but the human-designed systems held. "Captain, we're going to shake ourselves apart," Engineer Chen warned from engineering. "Just give me 30 seconds, Elena replied. "Navigation, plot a course straight through their formation. Maximum speed." "That's suicide," Park protested. "Trust me." Defiant accelerated to 0.7 light speed, a velocity that should have been impossible for a ship its size. The Vraxian fleet, concentrated in a dense formation, saw the human ship coming but couldn't react fast enough. Defiant punched through the center of their fleet like a bullet through tissue paper. The ship's shields were at maximum, deflecting smaller vessels that couldn't get out of the way. The railguns fired continuously, targeting ships on either side. The wake of destruction left behind was catastrophic. In a single pass, 40 Vraxian ships were destroyed or disabled. The enemy fleet broke. They had never encountered anything like this. Coalition ships fought predictably, following rules and doctrine. The humans fought like nothing the Vraxians had ever seen. They were fast, aggressive, and absolutely relentless. The Vraxian commander tried to rally his forces, but it was too late. The human ships pressed the attack, giving no quarter and accepting no surrender. One by one, the Vraxian vessels were destroyed or forced to retreat. 12 hours after the battle began, it was over. The Vraxian fleet was in full retreat, leaving behind over 200 destroyed ships. The 3 human vessels were battered and scorched, but all 3 were intact. Casualty reports came in. 47 dead, 112 wounded. On New Johannesburg, the colonists emerged from their shelters to see the debris of the Vraxian fleet scattered across their sky. Not a single raider had reached the planet's surface. Elena sat in her captain's chair, exhausted. Around her, the bridge crew was equally tired but triumphant. They had done the impossible. Admiral Chen's face appeared on the communication screen. Captain Vasquez, Coalition Command is requesting a full tactical report. They want to know how 3 ships defeated an entire Vraxian fleet. Elena smiled wearily. Tell them we fought like humans, sir. That should explain everything. Across the galaxy, military officers watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. The data was checked and rechecked. 3 ships had defeated 200, not through some trick or lucky circumstance, but through superior tactics, technology, and sheer determination. High Chancellor Vexith watched the recordings in his private chambers. When they finished, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he spoke to his aide. Those ships, the ones we gave to humanity, they're not the same vessels anymore, are they? No, Chancellor. The humans rebuilt them completely. They're something new now. Vexith's expression was unreadable. What have we created? The aide had no answer. But across the galaxy, everyone was asking the same question. Humanity had just announced its presence on the galactic stage, and the message was clear. Underestimate humans at your own peril. The victory at New Johannesburg sent shockwaves through the Galactic Coalition. Every news service carried the story. 3 human ships had accomplished what entire coalition fleets had failed to do for decades. They had shattered a Vraxian assault force. The political reaction was immediate and divided. Some species praised humanity's courage and skill. Others saw the humans as dangerous wildcards who didn't follow proper military doctrine. And the Corthian Empire saw something else entirely: humiliation. Elena was in her quarters aboard Defiant 3 weeks after the battle, when the official summons arrived. She read it carefully, then read it again to make sure she understood correctly. They want us to attend a formal inquiry, she told her senior officers at the emergency briefing. The Corthian Empire is claiming that we violated the terms of the ship transfer agreement. What agreement? Commander Jackson looked confused. They gave us the ships. We accepted them. There were no conditions. Apparently the Corthians feel differently. Elena pulled up the legal documents. They're claiming that by extensively modifying the vessels, we violated intellectual property rights. They say the technology used in the original design belongs to the Corthian Empire, and we had no right to alter it. Engineer Chen laughed, but it was an angry sound. We altered it because their design was garbage. Those ships would have killed us if we hadn't rebuilt them. The Corthians know that, Elena replied. This isn't really about intellectual property. It's about pride. We took their cast-offs and made them better than Corthian frontline ships. That's embarrassing for them. The inquiry was held at the Coalition Council chambers. Elena and her officers stood before the assembled delegates, with High Chancellor Vexith presiding. The Corthian legal team presented their case with great formality, arguing that humanity had overstepped its bounds. The Mortis-class dreadnoughts represent centuries of Corthian engineering excellence, declared the lead Corthian advocate. To so extensively modify these vessels without permission is an insult to the Empire and a violation of our cultural and technological heritage. Elena listened patiently. When it was her turn to respond, she stood and addressed the council directly. The Corthian Empire gave humanity 12 ships that were scheduled for destruction. They were unsafe to operate and falling apart. We accepted them gratefully as we had no other option. We then used our own resources, our own technology, and our own ingenuity to make those ships operational. Every modification we made was necessary for the safety of our crews. She paused, looking directly at Vexith. If the Korthian Empire believes these ships still belong to them, we will gladly return them. Give us back the scrap metal you originally planned to give us instead, and we'll call it even. The chamber erupted in discussion. The Korthian advocates conferred urgently. They had not expected such a direct response. To admit the ships were worthless would be humiliating. To insist they were valuable would justify everything humanity had done. High Chancellor Vexith raised a hand for silence. This inquiry is postponed pending further review. His tone suggested he was not pleased with how this was proceeding. That evening, Elena received an unexpected visitor. Rixtal, the Quellan engineer who had warned her about the ships months ago, requested a private meeting. They met in a secure conference room. "Captain Vasquez, I bring you a warning," Rixtal said, his crest flickering with agitation. "The Korthian Empire will not let this matter rest. They cannot afford to. You have made them look weak in front of the entire galaxy." "We didn't try to embarrass them," Elena replied. "We just tried to survive, I know. But perception matters more than intention in galactic politics. The Korthians are planning something. I do not know what, but my sources suggest they will try to prove their ships are superior to yours." "In combat?" Elena asked. "Perhaps. Be careful, Captain. The Empire does not lose gracefully." Rixtal's warning proved accurate. 2 weeks later, Emperor Kralix himself made a formal declaration before the Coalition Council. Elena watched the broadcast from Defiance Bridge. The Emperor was even more imposing than Vexith, standing 4 meters tall in ceremonial armor that gleamed like gold. His voice carried absolute authority. "The Korthian Empire issues a challenge to humanity, an honor duel as is our ancient right. 3 of our modern warships against 3 of the vessels humanity claims to have improved. The battle will be held in neutral space, observed by all Coalition members. If humanity wins, the matter of the ship modifications will be settled in their favor forever. If we win, the ships will be returned to us and humanity will accept new vessels under appropriate supervision." The chamber fell silent. This was unprecedented. An honor duel between species was rare, and one involving actual warships was almost unheard of in modern times. Elena felt her pulse quicken. This was a trap. The Korthians would be fighting with their newest, most advanced ships. They would have every advantage. But refusing would be seen as cowardice, and humanity would lose whatever respect they had gained. She opened a secure channel to Admiral Chen at Titan Yards. "Sir, we need to accept this challenge. There's no other option." "I agree," Chen replied. "But Captain, those Korthian ships are less than a year old. State-of-the-art technology. Crews trained for years. This is not like fighting the Vraxians." "I know, but we've got something they don't have, adaptability. Start gathering tactical data on their new ships. I want to know everything about them." Over the next 3 weeks, humanity prepared for the duel. Elena chose Defiant, Ghost, and Hammer for the engagement. Ghost was their stealth specialist, fitted with experimental cloaking technology that the engineers had been perfecting. Hammer was their artillery platform, carrying long-range weapons that could strike from extreme distances. Intelligence reports about the Korthian ships were concerning. The vessels were called the Imperator class, and they were formidable. Larger than the refitted human ships with heavier armor and more powerful weapons. Each one was a showcase of Korthian military technology. On paper, we're outmatched in every category, Commander Jackson reported at the tactical briefing. Their shields are stronger, their weapons hit harder, their armor is thicker. On paper, Elena agreed. But battles aren't won on paper.
What are their weaknesses?
The team worked through the data for hours. Slowly, patterns emerged. The Korthian ships were powerful but inflexible. They were designed for traditional formation warfare, expecting enemies to fight in predictable ways. Their sensor arrays were excellent but focused primarily on standard wavelengths. Their tactics were rigid, following doctrine that had been refined over centuries. "They're thinking like the Coalition," Lieutenant Park observed. "Formation fighting, coordinated volleys, everything by the book." "Then we don't use the book," Elena said. "We write a new one." The duel was scheduled to take place in the Theta sector, an empty region of space far from any inhabited systems. A dozen Coalition observer ships gathered to witness the event. The entire galaxy was watching through broadcast feeds. The three Corthian ships arrived first, moving in perfect formation. They were beautiful vessels, all sleek lines and polished armor. They looked like they had been built to be works of art as much as instruments of war. The three human ships arrived 30 minutes later. Next to the pristine Corthian vessels, they looked rough and practical. They bore the scars of the battle at New Johannesburg, patches and repairs visible on their hulls. But their engines glowed with steady power, and their weapons were ready. Emperor Kralix himself commanded the lead Corthian ship, the Vengeance. He opened a communication channel to all participants. "Humanity, you have accepted our challenge. Know that we fight with honor, but we fight to win. When this is over, you will understand that Corthian technology cannot be improved by primitive modifications." Elena responded calmly, "Emperor, we didn't improve your technology. We replaced it. There's a difference." The Emperor's expression darkened. "Begin." The battle started cautiously, with both sides assessing each other. The Corthian ships moved into a triangular formation, a classic defensive arrangement. They advanced slowly, weapons charged and shields at maximum. The human ships scattered immediately, breaking in 3 different directions. Ghost activated its cloaking systems and disappeared from standard sensors. Hammer began a long arc that would take it to maximum weapons range. Defiant accelerated directly toward the Corthian formation. "Arrogant," Emperor Kralix muttered on the open channel. "You charge alone while your companions flee?" "Not fleeing," Elena replied. "Positioning." Ghost was nearly invisible, using the cloaking system that bent light and sensor waves around its hull. The technology was still experimental and had limitations, but against sensors calibrated for normal wavelengths, it was effective. Ghost began feeding targeting data to the other 2 human ships, creating a complete picture of the battlefield that the Corthians couldn't match. Hammer reached extreme range and opened fire. Its long-range railguns launched projectiles that would take minutes to reach their targets, but the volume of fire was enormous. The Corthians detected the incoming fire and adjusted their shields to face that direction, which was exactly what Elena wanted. With the Corthian shields oriented toward Hammer, their flanks were less protected. Defiant came in fast from the side, its weapons already firing. The Corthians tried to adjust, but they were locked into their formation. Doctrine said they should maintain formation integrity above all else. Defiant's missiles struck home, overwhelming one Corthian ship's shields through sheer volume. The railgun rounds followed, punching through the weakened defenses to score hits on the hull. It was not catastrophic damage, but it was first blood to humanity. The Corthians broke formation as they had to, but they broke slowly, following proper procedures for formation dissolution. That hesitation cost them precious seconds. Ghost decloaked directly behind one Corthian ship and fired at point-blank range. The surprise attack devastated the enemy shields before they could reinforce that arc. The Corthian ship tried to turn, but Ghost was already moving, slipping away before the enemy weapons could target it. Emperor Kralix realized the trap too late. The humans weren't fighting like the Coalition. They weren't following any recognizable doctrine. They were fighting like guerrillas, striking and fading, using every trick and advantage they could find.
Enough!
The Emperor's voice boomed across the channel. "We will show you true power." The Corthian ships activated their heavy weapons, particle beams that could slice through armor like butter. But those weapons required time to charge and had limited firing arcs. The human ships were already moving, refusing to stay in one place long enough to be targeted. Hammer continued its barrage from long range, forcing the Corthians to maintain their shields while trying to close the distance. Defiant and Ghost worked in concert, one drawing fire while the other struck. It was chaos to watch, but perfectly coordinated from the human perspective. Then the Corthians made their mistake. Emperor Kralix, frustrated by the human tactics, ordered his ships to pursue Defiant aggressively. All 3 Corthian vessels burned hard after Elena's ship, determined to corner it and destroy it. They flew directly into the debris field that Elena had been leading them toward. The region was filled with rocks and ice from an ancient asteroid collision. It wasn't dangerous to navigate slowly, but at high speed it was treacherous. The Corthian ships had to slow down or risk collision. Their larger size made them less maneuverable among the obstacles. Defiant, smaller and more agile, danced through the field with ease. Ghost and Hammer closed in from opposite sides. The Corthians found themselves caught in a crossfire. Unable to maneuver freely, their formation broken. They fought valiantly, but they were fighting on human terms now. The Emperor played his final card. He activated a weapon system that was not standard on Corthian ships, something that he had added secretly. It was a gravitic disruptor, a weapon banned by coalition law for its indiscriminate destructive power. Elena saw the energy build up on her sensors. "Treachery," she said calmly. "All ships, emergency evasion pattern Delta 7. The 3 human ships scattered in random directions, their pilots throwing their vessels into maneuvers that would have torn apart less reinforced ships. The gravitic pulse fired, creating a wave of spatial distortion that could have disabled all 3 human ships if they had stayed in formation. But they weren't there, and Elena had been recording everything. "Emperor," she said quietly, "you just used a forbidden weapon in front of a dozen coalition observer ships. The honor duel is forfeit." The silence that followed was deafening. Emperor Kralix had made the worst possible choice. He had been so determined to win that he had violated the most fundamental rules of the duel. The coalition observer ships confirmed the weapon signature. The ruling was immediate. Humanity won by default due to Corthian rule violation. But more than that, the Corthian Empire was now facing sanctions for the use of forbidden weapons. Elena opened a final channel to the Emperor. "You could have won with honor. We're not unbeatable. But you were so afraid of losing to humans that you cheated. And now everyone knows." She ordered her ships to disable the Corthian vessels rather than destroy them. It took careful shooting, targeting weapons and engines while leaving life support intact. It was a mercy that the Emperor had not earned but that humanity granted anyway. When the battle ended, 3 Corthian ships floated disabled in space, and 3 human ships stood victorious. The galaxy watched in amazement. Humanity had not only won but had shown mercy and honor in the face of treachery. Emperor Kralix was forced to concede. His face on the communication screen showed barely controlled rage. "The ships are yours. You have proven your point." "No," Elena corrected gently. "We've proven that underestimating others is always a mistake. Maybe your empire will remember that." The 3 human ships returned home to celebration. But Elena knew this was just the beginning. They had made an enemy of the Corthian Empire, but they had also earned respect across the galaxy. The 12 ships that had been given as garbage were now recognized as legitimate warships. Over the following year, each human ship continued to evolve and specialize. The crews learned what their vessels could do and pushed those boundaries further. Defiant became the command ship leading human task forces. Ghost perfected its stealth capabilities. Hammer became the fire support specialist that other ships called when they needed heavy artillery. The humans were no longer a joke. They were a force to be reckoned with. And when the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known emerged from the darkness, humanity would be ready. The alert came from the Galactic Core on a quiet morning. Elena was reviewing training schedules when every communication system aboard Defiant began screaming priority warnings. Within seconds, Admiral Chen's face appeared on her screen, and she knew immediately that something terrible had happened. "Captain, we have a galaxy-level emergency. The cascade has awakened." Elena felt ice form in her stomach. Every species in the galaxy knew about the cascade, even if most considered it ancient history or legend. 10,000 years ago, an automated war fleet had swept through the galaxy, destroying 3 major civilizations before mysteriously going dormant. The surviving species had built the coalition partly to ensure they could face such a threat together, if it ever returned. Now it had returned. "How bad is it?" Elena asked. "Bad. The cascade has already destroyed the Velthorian home system. Complete extinction. 4 billion dead. They hit the Corthian border worlds next. 3 systems gone in 72 hours. Chen's face was grim. "Coalition fleets are engaging, but nothing is working. The cascade's technology is so far beyond ours that we might as well be throwing rocks." Over the next week, the news got worse. Coalition battle groups that had seemed invincible were destroyed without slowing the cascade's advance. The enemy ships were massive constructs that seemed to bend reality around them. Their weapons ignored shields, their hulls regenerated damage, and they adapted to every tactic used against them. Entire species began evacuating their homeworlds. Refugee fleets clogged the trade routes. Panic spread across the galaxy. The cascade was not raiders or pirates. It was extinction made manifest, and it could not be negotiated with or reasoned with. The Coalition Council called an emergency session. Elena attended via holographic link, watching as species after species reported losses. The Corthians had lost 20% of their fleet. The Velcoran were considering full evacuation of their territory. Even proud species were talking about surrender, though no one knew if the Cascade would accept surrender. High Chancellor Vexith looked older than Elena had ever seen him. We are losing. In 3 months, the Cascade will reach the core worlds. In 6 months, the Coalition will cease to exist. Does anyone have any options we have not considered? The chamber was silent. Then Admiral Chen spoke up from the human delegation area. We have an option. It's desperate, but it might work. Every eye turned to him. Chen continued, his voice steady. The Cascade's central nexus is at the galactic core, coordinating all their forces. If we could destroy the nexus, the entire fleet might shut down. That's what happened 10,000 years ago, according to the historical records. Someone got a strike force through to the core and damaged it badly enough that the Cascade went dormant. We have tried attacking the nexus, a Velcoran admiral protested. 3 separate strike forces. None came close. The defenses are impossible. They're impossible for conventional forces, Chen agreed. But humanity would like to volunteer for this mission. All 12 of our ships in a coordinated assault on the Cascade Nexus. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some called it suicide. Others called it a waste of resources. But Elena saw something else in the faces of the assembled delegates. Hope. Desperate, unlikely hope, but hope nonetheless. Elena stood. Admiral Chen is correct. This is a suicide mission, but it's the only chance we have. If we do nothing, everyone dies anyway. At least this way, we die trying. The vote was close, but it passed. Humanity was authorized to make the attempt. Elena returned to Defiant and called a meeting of all 12 ship captains. They gathered virtually, their faces appearing on screens around the conference table. Captain Torres of Relentless spoke first. We all know what this means. We're not coming back from this. Probably not, Elena agreed. So I'm putting it to a vote. Every crew member on every ship gets to choose. We need volunteers only. Anyone who wants to transfer off has that right with no shame. The votes came in over the next 6 hours. 12 ships, 17,000 crew members. The results were unanimous. Every single person voted to go. Dr. Okonkwo found Elena in her quarters that evening. You knew they'd all volunteer, didn't you? I hoped, Elena replied. But I didn't know. We're the Coffin Corps, Okonkwo said with a sad smile. We've always known we might end up in those coffins for real. At least this way, we go out protecting everyone. The 12 human ships gathered at the rally point near the galactic rim. Engineers had been working around the clock for 2 weeks making modifications. Elena reviewed the technical specifications and felt a chill. Protocol Coffin, she read aloud. Engineer Chen had named it with her usual dark humor. It's what we needed, Chen explained. The Cascade's defenses can stop any weapon we have, but they can't stop a ship from getting through if it's willing to sacrifice itself. So we modified the reactors. Instead of safely shutting down in an emergency, they'll do the opposite. They'll go critical in a controlled cascade that will tear open a hole in space-time. 1 ship alone won't do much damage, but 12 ships detonating in sequence in exactly the right places around the Nexus will destroy it, Elena finished. But someone has to stay on each ship to manually override the safeties. The automated systems won't let the reactors go critical. Yes, the captains will need to stay behind. Elena nodded slowly. She had already guessed as much. Then that's what we'll do. The journey to the galactic core took 3 weeks at maximum speed. Along the way, they passed through regions devastated by the Cascade. Dead worlds with their atmospheres stripped away. Debris fields that had once been cities. The scale of destruction was beyond comprehension. They encountered Cascade ships on the way. The first battle taught them hard lessons. The enemy vessels were exactly as described, terrifying in their efficiency. Tempest was destroyed in that first engagement, rammed by a Cascade construct after its weapons proved ineffective. But the remaining 11 ships learned and adapted. Ghost's cloaking systems, while not perfect against Cascade sensors, could create enough confusion to buy precious seconds. Hammer's long-range weapons could at least force the enemy to maneuver, and if they worked together, concentrating fire on single targets, they could destroy Cascade ships. It just took everything they had to kill each one. Phoenix fell in the second major battle, its crew fighting to the last to protect the other ships. Stalwart was destroyed, covering a withdrawal after a failed approach to the core. Vigilance reactor took a direct hit, and the crew had 18 seconds to evacuate before it exploded. Some made it. Many did not. By the time they reached the approach to the Cascade Nexus, 7 ships remained. 7 crews, battered and exhausted but still fighting. The Nexus was beautiful in a terrible way, a structure the size of a moon, covered in geometric patterns that hurt to look at. Energy crackled across its surface in colors that should not exist. Around it orbited thousands of Cascade ships, a defensive network that seemed impenetrable. "Well," Captain Morrison said over the command channel, "we didn't come this far to give up now." The 7 ships charged. It was not subtle or clever. It was a desperate rush toward the Nexus, fighting through everything in their path. The Cascade's defenders swarmed them immediately. Valiant's shields failed under concentrated fire. Captain Sarah Kim stayed at her post firing weapons until her ship broke apart. Sentinel took a hit that severed the ship in half. The forward section, where Captain Rodriguez commanded, spun away into the void. Thunder's weapons overloaded from continuous firing, and the resulting explosion crippled the ship. Captain Lee ordered evacuation, but stayed to pilot the dying vessel into a cluster of Cascade defenders, clearing a path for the others. 4 ships reached the Nexus itself. Defiant, Ghost, Relentless, and Hammer. They were burning wrecks held together by determination and desperation. But they had made it. "Protocol Coffin," Elena ordered. "Begin evacuation procedures. All non-essential personnel to Ghost. Captains to their override stations." The evacuation was chaos. Escape pods launched from Defiant, Relentless, and Hammer. Crew members fled to Ghost, the only ship fast enough and stealthy enough to have a chance of escape. That ship was already overloaded with survivors from the other fallen vessels. Elena walked through Defiant's empty corridors. The ship was quiet except for the alarm's warning of critical damage. She reached the reactor control room and began the override sequence. It was complex, requiring manual input every 30 seconds to prevent automatic safety shutdowns. Captain Torres appeared on her screen from Relentless. "It's been an honor, Captain Vasquez." "The honor was mine," Elena replied. She could see Morrison on another screen, working at Hammer's controls. Ghost was already pulling away, accelerating hard toward the edge of Cascade space. "Entering position," Morrison reported. His voice was calm, almost peaceful. "Ready to initiate." "Relentless in position," Torres added. "Defiant ready," Elena said. She looked at the timer. 30 seconds until Ghost was at minimum safe distance. "On my mark. 3, 2, 1, mark." Morrison's reactor went first, a burst of energy that tore open space itself. The explosion was not fire or light, but something more fundamental, a wound in reality. It struck the Nexus and the structure shuddered. Torres was next. Relentless detonated exactly 3 seconds later, positioned to amplify Morrison's explosion. The combined force punched deep into the Nexus, and Elena could see systems failing across its surface. "Your turn, Captain," Torres said. Then her screen went dark. Elena entered the final command sequence. The reactor's countdown began. She had 45 seconds. Instead of running, she sat down in the captain's chair one last time. "Computer, begin recording." "Recording," the ship's AI confirmed. "This is Captain Elena Vasquez, final log entry. To whoever finds this, we came here to stop the Cascade. We didn't have the best ships or the most powerful weapons, but we had something else. We had people who refused to give up, who looked at impossible odds and said, 'Let me try anyway.' That's what makes humans dangerous. Not our technology or our tactics, our stubborn refusal to accept defeat." The countdown reached 20 seconds. They gave us floating coffins and expected us to die quietly. Instead, we became the galaxy's guardians, because that's what humans do. We turn impossible into inevitable. We take what we're given and make it enough. And we never ever stop fighting for what we believe in. 10 seconds. To the crew of Defiant and all the ships we lost, you were the best humanity had to offer. Your sacrifice meant something. Remember that. Remember us. 5 seconds. Computer, transmit this log to Ghost encoded in the reactor burst. Make sure it gets out. Transmission sent, the AI confirmed. Elena closed her eyes. She thought about Earth, about the blue oceans and green continents she would never see again. She thought about her crew, her friends, the people who had trusted her to lead them. She thought about the galaxy they were saving. "See you on the other side," she whispered. Defiant detonated. The 3 explosions, perfectly timed and positioned, created a cascading failure in the Nexus. The structure collapsed inward, its exotic matter containment failing. The resulting explosion was visible from 1,000 light-years away. Every Cascade ship in the galaxy simply stopped functioning simultaneously, their connection to the central intelligence severed. Ghost, overloaded with survivors, limped back to Coalition space. They brought news of the victory and Elena's final message. The log was broadcast across the galaxy, and there was not a dry eye among the billions who heard it. The Cascade threat was ended. The cost had been 7 human ships and thousands of lives. But the galaxy was saved. A memorial was built in orbit around Earth. 7 pillars of light, one for each ship that made the final assault. Their names were inscribed in every language of the Coalition: Defiant, Ghost, Relentless, Hammer, Valiant, Sentinel, and Thunder. And beside them the names of the fallen ships from earlier battles: Tempest, Phoenix, Stalwart, Vigilant, and the others. The 5 surviving human ships were redesignated as Terran dreadnoughts, a new classification in Coalition military terminology. Every species wanted to understand how humanity had done what they did, but the secret could not be replicated. It was not in the technology or the tactics. It was in the people. Admiral Chen stood at the memorial dedication ceremony. He was old now, tired from the war, but his voice was strong when he spoke. They gave us garbage and expected us to fail. Instead, we showed them what humans can do when pushed to our limits. We did not win because we were stronger or smarter. We won because we refused to lose. Because when faced with extinction, we chose to fight. That is humanity's legacy to the galaxy. The surviving crew members of Ghost stood in formation, bearing the scars of their impossible journey. Among them was Dr. Okonkwo, now promoted to captain of one of the new generation ships being built. These vessels were pure human engineering, incorporating everything learned from the Cascade War. The first of the new ships was nearly complete in the Titan yards. It was larger than the old Mortis-class vessels, sleeker and far more advanced, but it carried forward the lessons of its predecessors. Okonkwo stood at the dedication ceremony for the new ship. Admiral Chen handed her the command codes personally. "Captain Okonkwo, I present to you the first of our next-generation vessels. May it serve humanity and the galaxy with honor." Okonkwo looked up at the massive ship hanging in space above them. Its name was painted on the hull in letters that could be seen from kilometers away: Indomitable Spirit. "She's beautiful," Okonkwo said quietly. "She's a promise," Chen replied. "A promise that humanity will never stop reaching for the stars. Never stop defending those who need defending. Never stop being the stubborn, creative, impossible species that turned floating coffins into the galaxy's most feared warships." Okonkwo smiled. "Captain Vasquez would have liked that." "She would have," Chen agreed. "She would have been proud of all of you." The ceremony concluded with a moment of silence. Across the galaxy, ships of every species lowered their flags in respect. The Korthian Empire, once humanity's rivals, sent a formal message of condolence and respect. Even Emperor Kralix acknowledged what humanity had done. "We misjudged them," his message said. "We thought giving them broken ships was an insult. We did not understand that humans see challenges where others see insurmountable obstacles. They have earned their place among the stars. They have earned our respect." In the years that followed, humanity continued to build ships. The Terran Defense Force grew from 12 refitted vessels to a proper fleet of purpose-built warships. But every ship carried a plaque in its command center, bearing the names of the original 12 and a quote from Elena's final log. "They gave us floating coffins. We made them into something that mattered." Young officers entering the fleet learned about the Coffin Corps, about the impossible battle at New Johannesburg, about the honor duel with the Korthians, and about the final sacrifice at the Galactic Core. It became required study, a reminder of what humans could accomplish when they refused to accept defeat. Ghost, the only ship to survive the final battle, was retired from active service and became a museum. Millions visited it each year, walking its scarred corridors and standing on the bridge where Captain Marcus Chen had coordinated the evacuation while dodging cascade fire. Children pressed their faces against the viewports, dreaming of flying among the stars. The legacy of those 12 ships spread far beyond humanity. Other species studied human tactics, trying to understand the unconventional thinking that had won impossible victories. Some succeeded in adopting more flexible strategies. Others never quite grasped the essential element, that humans did not see rules as fixed laws but as guidelines to be adapted when necessary. The galaxy was different now. Safer thanks to the sacrifice of those who fought the cascade, but also more interesting, more diverse because humanity had proven that the established ways were not the only ways. That sometimes the best solution came from questioning everything and trying something new. On Earth, in a small park in Geneva near the old Coalition embassy, another memorial stood. It was simpler than the orbital monument. Just a stone with 12 names carved into it and beneath them 5 words. They turned impossible into inevitable. Every year on the anniversary of the Battle of the Cascade Nexus, people gathered there. Veterans of the war, families of the fallen, children too young to remember but old enough to understand what had been sacrificed. They stood in silence, remembering the day humanity proved that courage and determination could overcome even the darkest threats. And above them, in the orbital yards and shipyards scattered across the solar system, new ships were being built. Each one carrying forward the spirit of those original 12 vessels. Each one ready to defend, to protect, to face the impossible and make it possible. Because that is what humans do. That is what they have always done. Give them scraps and they will build wonders. Give them challenges and they will find solutions. Give them floating coffins and they will turn them into superweapons, not through superior technology, not through overwhelming force, but through the stubborn, unstoppable human refusal to give up, through creativity born of necessity, through the willingness to try something new when the old ways fail. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Never underestimate humanity. Never assume that giving them less means they will achieve less. Because humans have a gift for taking whatever they are given and making it more than enough. They gave humanity floating coffins. Humanity turned them into legends.